Okay.
Hi, and welcome to our Thursday book launch. My name is Malika Albrecht, and I'm the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. Tonight, we will be celebrating with Caroline Cottom, whose most recent book, Asylum, is out with Main Street Rag. I want to remind you that once we get started, please mute your mic. And if you would like to read for open mic portion at the end of this, just send me a message and I'll put you on the list. I also want to say that if for whatever reasons you'd rather me not record, because this is being recorded now, so that anybody that missed Caroline's reading can see it. If you'd rather me not record when you're reading your poem, just send me a message and I'll pause very nonchalantly. Caroline has a great backstory and I have questions, but I am really looking forward to hearing you read from your book. I'm going to read a brief bio and then swiftly turn it over to her so we can celebrate this book. Caroline Cottom, PhD, is the granddaughter of sharecroppers. Her mother grew up chopping cotton. She's a former faculty member at Vanderbilt University and Watkins School of Art and Design, and now teaches writing in community settings and also online. So if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to her. Her email is in the chat section. Her poetry appears in numerous journals and anthologies. In a former life, and this is what we've been talking about, in a former life, she led the coalition that brought an end to nuclear test explosions in Nevada. Her memoir recounts this, and it's called Love Changes Things, Even in the World of Politics. Her website is Caroline Cottom, just like it's spelled, .com. And also in the chat section, you can go directly to get the book. But if you're interested in having a signed copy, you can reach out to Caroline. Her email address is in the chat section. I may repost that. Caroline, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and remind everybody to mute. And thank you so much for being here. I look forward to hearing you read.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. It's right. I'm just delighted with all of you who came. Delighted that my publisher is here, Mr. Scott Douglas. Thank you, Scott, for coming to this. And many wonderful friends, and hope to be new friends. I'm going to read from Asylum. I'm going to hold up the cover for just a moment. The opening poem is about this photo, which is a photo of my mother at the age of 4 on the Mississippi floodplain in West Tennessee. And you can see a little church in the background. The poem is called Church at Mooring. And I want to say a couple of things about the book. There are poems of landscape, including this landscape, which is West Tennessee, where my mother grew up. Poems about the family, some of them not such easy experiences, but they're in this book, and poems of emotion. And the book follows a narrative arc, much as a memoir or a novel. So that's kind of an important piece of information about the book, so that if you want to read them from front to back, that's a great idea too. The book is dedicated to my mother, and the epigraph says, "Over there beside the road, is that the letter I should have left for you, Mother?" So I'm going to begin with the opening poem, Church at Mooring. In the photo, my mother at 4 poses on the Mississippi floodplain. One-room church in the distance, muddy river water lashing its pilings. Plump cheeks, snow color hair, sleeves of her wool coat longer than her arms, her head turned as though a voice in the water calls, "Come." The currents could carry her to the backwater where my father will shatter her. On a drive through West Tennessee, I've come upon the church, its steeple choked with ivy, a rusted cotton stripper in the yard, brambles rupturing a broken down pickup truck. Here in Mooring, farm shack and field, where my mother chopped cotton as a child, head turned, lace up shoes wet with mud. So my mother chopped cotton through high school. And when she graduated from high school at the age of 18, she moved to Memphis and to go to business school. She waitressed at Walgreens, which used to be a thing to do, right? They had counters. And it was there that she met a traveling salesman. And this next poem is called Dotted Swiss. Now, some of you will know what that fabric is. It's a very thin cotton that has little dots, like little balls of cotton on it. And so this is Dotted Swiss. She loved Santa Barbara's pounding foam, the mute swans fluttering and hissing on St. Charles ponds, loved scrubbing a white ceramic sink. She wore dotted Swiss dresses, white purses and pumps, planted lilies of the valley beneath our kitchen window. Inside her, a spool of roadsides littered with clumps of cotton, fronts of stores blown with cotton drifts. She married the traveling man, eyes of pitch, hands flickering like feathers of crow. So who was this man who would become the father of her two daughters? Woven through the book are segments of the father's obituary written by the elder daughter, me. Here's the first entry in the obituary, May 21, 1986. Truman Willard Cottom, after a long illness, died trailing the perfume of 100 women, including her two daughters. His two daughters, sorry, including his two daughters. So the title Asylum refers to seeking refuge. And it also refers to encounters with insane asylums that I had and that my mother had. And here is the first poem to establish the theme. It's called Asylum 1. And in this poem, the inhabitants of the asylum, their ghosts or revenants, rummage in the attic. There's an epigraph. The Willard Asylum for the Insane in upstate New York closed its doors in 1995. 400 suitcases were found in the attic, the contents photographed by John Crispin. Linger on images, each photo lost, untouched. Hairpins, pliers, sequined belts, wooden leg in a box. A woman's list, black dress, blue skirt, jacket with fig applique. Needles and threads, baby shoe, Shakespeare's tragedies, curling iron, glass vase, revenants, rummage, wedding photos, fork, spoon, music book, canceled clock. This poem is paired with Daddy's suitcase. Mother and I watched crisp white shirts, leather dop kit, razor strop, Old Spice for calling on prospects. He was a bus ticket out of her sharecropping life. Ivory gown for their wedding night, peep toe slippers, lipstick cameo pink. 2 weeks later, a russet smear on a shirt in his suitcase. Shalimar, rouge, blonde hairs on his suit, redheads, brunettes, hazel-eyed waitresses like her. A 17-year-old he brought home. Cousins, me. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, women were put into insane asylums. You probably all know this, for just being women, for disagreeing with their husbands, for for having emotions, for wanting to step out of the role that society had planned for them. So in the book, there are 3 lists of causes for mental illness as listed on asylum records. And here are a few of those items. Ill treatment by husband. Imaginary female trouble. Uterine derangement. Time of life. Novel reading. Sexual abuse and stimulants. So as a college freshman, I found myself drawn to visit insane asylums, not knowing why then, because I did not remember being abused. I didn't remember till I was in my 40s, but I was empathetic with those who were on the inside. And so this next poem, there are 2 poems in the book about visiting asylums. This one's called Asylum in the Fields, Northfield, Minnesota, 1961. Sorry, drink water. The hay fields buried under a carapace of snow, I tramp for miles to an angular brick building at the junction of 2 unpaved country roads to sing O Holy Night, but no one peers out the square windows embedded in the walls, and no one unbars the wood door. For whoever lives and dies in that place, I can do nothing to bring back the hour of the last glorious spring, or even winter's first white flurry. Voices rustle in the dry leaves in my piano, fall on your knees once more. So my sister, Kathy, was 4 years younger than me and my closest person in my life, really, in a way. And she and I went through this together. We were really there for each other. And this poem is called House of Wax, which was the name of a horror movie in 1953. I don't know how many of you have seen it. It was quite a horror movie for my sister and me. So here's the poem, House of Wax. Isn't he who, a man with peeled pink skin inside a black cloak, isn't he bagging women in their beds, swinging into rooftop rooms on a rope to lash and drag them to his museum, coat them with boiling wax? Doesn't he live in our girl minds? Surely as mother and daddy sleep dead to the world in the next room, this pink man skulking in our closets, under our beds, we bodyguards peek under the window shades before we cover ourselves to our chins. Blankets wound tightly around our bodies like cordage. So the man whose skin has gone up in flames, muscles raw as a skinned mullet, will not know we are here. So one might say we lived in a house of wax. It's a little bit like that. My memories of being abused were, as I mentioned, occluded till I was in my 40s, and then began the work of undoing what he had done. And my father was, in fact, sort of a contradiction, I guess, loving toward us, but he was a sex addict, clearly. And I wanted to know where that compulsion came from. So this poem is called Louisiana Swamp Pattern. My father was born in Louisiana, as was his mother, who was Choctaw. Maybe his mother, her pink bed, lavish caresses, cooing, he would beg, stop. Maybe the bottomland forests, long fingers of moss hanging from live oak trees, the steaming. Maybe the voices, his 7 laughing uncles passing her around. Maybe he couldn't help himself, the daddy who talked baby talk when he tucked me in. Maybe he couldn't resist my velvet little girl body. While working on the book, I came across drawings I had made for my father when I was 2 years old. He was overseas in the Army Air Corps, and I'd seen the drawings before, but I had not really looked at them. It's really interesting to see them now and to see actually it looks like arms hugging this man with black hair, which he was. Really interesting. But my mother asked me what I wanted the pictures to say, and so she wrote on the pictures, and those are in the book. And they were words that I had love for my father, which tells me now that there was love for him before. There were also experiences of discovery and healing for many years for me. And this one poem is about a trip to the Bahamas I took with a friend, where I experienced an epiphany, inexplicable, but a deep knowing that something had changed. This one is called Crossing. How am I alive? An ocean trapped in a vase. Dreams of sunlit seas, sunless seas. The sway of a catamaran heading for blue water. If only something could change. I feed as I feed the fish, my doing after my undoing. So I'm reading this next poem about my sister, mainly because I want to read this poem, and it's about my sister's death, which was a hugely important event in my life. There's a huge grief in it. She died very young, at the age of 32, and it's also because her dying opened me up spiritually in a very profound way. And so this poem is called 8 Bells, refers to the 8 bells that are rung on a ship when a sailor dies. 1. Tossing in a twin bed by the window, Kathy distilled the world's platter to blackberry juice and mother's tapioca. 2. Kathy surged, dreamed of ocean, the teddy bear steady in its chair, its eyes a constant horizon. 3. She begged us to carry her to Hawaii, collapsed on the steps before we left, crushing her hope of absolution. 4. Would Peter build a hot tub to soak her riddled bones? For days he dug into the slope, leaving her with me. 5. One by one, she asked if we would judge her if she took the pills. One by one, we said we loved her. 6. Peter lit a fire that formed a cloak around us, brought a pitcher of water and glasses to drink while she drank. 7. Climbing into the sleeping bag, raising her fist, I did it. She fell asleep. 6 hours we wept, caressing her body. 8. I heard her soul ring through the house like a boat tolling its bell as it departed. I'm going to read just one more poem. This one is going back to my mother and Mooring, Tennessee. It's called Cypress Left Standing. And near Mooring, there is a lake called Reelfoot Lake, which was made when the Mississippi ran backwards during over 200 earthquakes in 1812 and 1813. And it's a very stunning lake where there are just a few cypresses still in the lake, and the lake is surrounded with these beautiful bald cypresses. So this is Cypress Lift standing. My mother loved this lake, its shallows and throngs of snowy egrets. Reelfoot Lake, the compass my ancestors called home. I imagine a girlhood, family outings, sweet corn, fried chicken, red checked cloths, but the images flicker in black and white. After earthquakes and Mississippi floods created the lake, loggers felled every tree whose roots were underwater. Cypresses still standing seem to whisper. Foxes and red-winged blackbirds sound out my name. I kneel at my mother's grave, feel her on the banks, in the fields, hear her in the muted wing beats of a great blue heron as egrets fill the trees with blossoms of lace. So thank you. I'm going to end there. And just so delighted that you're all here.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That was just powerful. Everybody, you can unmute because I know we all want to take a moment just to say thank you. Whew. There is a lot of people that have put down quotes that really resonated. And, once again, a lot of us found the same thing. Yeah, Jennifer wrote beautiful reading. It was a very lovely voice. And Scott, I think you put somewhere in there, perfect delivery.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's nice.
And Joan said it's a haunting book. So I've been trying to keep track of any questions. If I have missed something, yes. Yeah, what courage and beauty a gift is what Donna said. And then Regina said, your vocal expression could not have been better. Agreed. When we were talking about audio tapes and how, a lot of us would prefer a professional reader, but your voice was perfect. It was a perfect, rang true and the perfect expression. Yeah, the poems are moving and beautiful. I also, I don't know if other people found this, but there was so many tactile sensations to a lot of the poems. And I found that interesting because a lot of times people don't have texture in poems, and yours were very rich with them. And I just wanted to put that. Did other people have that? Does that resonate for other people? Yep. And is that something you're aware of, Carolyn? Is that something that's conscious or?
I don't know how to answer that question. I do really, I love to write about, I don't know how to say it really. I love to write about what I feel is beautiful.
Yeah.
And yet this, this book, as you could see, is about a tragedy, children growing up in these households of sexual abuse. But, I'm doing great. So,
well, I think you
got a lot of feeling, a lot of words.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I think you hold space for that haunting and that horror, but also something very beautiful coming from it. And the tactile to me had a very grounding effect. And I think that when you're talking about things that are very, very painful, the tactile is kind of this grounding sensation. So I was just wondering if that was something that was conscious or resonated with other people. Yeah. So Carolyn, Mary Jewel wrote, love to see you clearing your throat with a Mexican glass of water.
Yes, Mary lives in Bucerias, Mexico, where I lived.
Oh, that's fabulous. And then Regina said, it's clear this comes from a place that you know deeply. And then Joan wrote, a strong reading, Carolyn, great sequence of poems beginning to end. Yes, it was a lovely selection to choose too. Do people want to ask questions to Carolyn about her writing process or how she created the narrative arc? I enjoyed hearing the backstory and the obit threaded throughout the book. That was very, very powerful. And so I have questions about how you found yourself writing this book. At what point did you realize and start consciously working on the narrative arc, the whole story?
Well, I started writing these poems. I wrote prose about my experiences as a child and as an adolescent for a number of years. And then I started writing poems about it, and I handed a group of poems to a poet, a published poet, to look at and give me feedback. And she said, "You have quite a stable of poems about your father." And I said, "I do?" You know, it's kind of like, "Oh, I do?" And she said, "Well, tell me about that." And so this person just started asking me questions, and I would tell Louise, she'd say, "Write a poem about that, write a poem about that." And so there are a lot of poems that I wrote about those experiences that are not in this book, honestly. And then I met Veronica, who's here, at a writers conference, and she really resonated with what I was writing about. And I could tell that she really could hear what the material was. She could really hear it. And I shared that manuscript with her. I had a manuscript at that point. And she and I both loved two parts of that manuscript best and not the rest of it. So I tossed the rest of it aside and started working from there. And that was about, I don't know, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah. And the insane asylums were a part of that we both really resonated with that. I had visited some. My mother spent some time in a mental ward. That's in the book. And Veronica had her hand up.
Yes, Veronica, and then I saw Joan did too. Veronica, I thank you for telling that backstory.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
You guys need to unmute.
Veronica, are you on? You're unmuted. Did you have a question?
Well, more of a observation, and that it seems to me, and I've read other books like this, that what besides what everybody said about the language, the grounding of the language, the lyricism of the language, it's the restraint in these poems that they're not telling you everything. It's not a journal entry. It's really so finely crafted. I mean, when you read it, you could just see like every word, every line, where the lines are broken. And there's like this space. And that's how she reads it also, that it's so important. This is such an example of a good reading, because a lot of times I know wonderful poets and they like rush through and then have the second poem and third, and you're like, wait. And I think that this kind of quiet space, both visually and auditorily, is really important for this book. And the delicateness of her writing is really beautiful.
Well put, Veronica. I really appreciate too that the delicacy and how that pacing and that understatement really leaves some energy in the air in a powerful way. You know, people oftentimes forget that, you know, the whole structure of a poem, the spaces and the white space is very important. Well put. Joan, you wanted to dovetail with that, or you had another insight?
Yes, both. Carolyn, I'm confident that you're often asked, how can you write about such difficult subjects? How is it possible for you to, I mean, isn't it too painful to do that? And I'm asked that question all the time too.
Right.
Do you have a current answer?
Well, I think what I said earlier relates to this, which is that I wrote a lot before I got to the place, in my case, before I got to the place where I could write a poem about an aspect of the experience. And I did so much healing work. I wanted to tell you that. I did body work, I did meditation, I did counseling, I did writing, I did lots and lots of different things. Spent time in Fiji staring at the rainforest for 9 months. I mean, just clearing. It was very painful at times, but very powerful. And And that, so the healing work was a part of it. And the other part of it was the getting it out. And then, when Veronica said to me, why don't you step back? And I just stepped back from that big manuscript. I didn't like it. I'd sent it out a few times. I didn't like it. I set it aside and started saying, well, what's here that I like? What would I like? And that's kind of, I grew from there. But I'm sure you get asked that same question. Joan has written a beautiful chapbook about a very difficult time of raising a child who was very ill. This beautiful book.
Yeah, we celebrated carrying Claire with Joan here as well.
Yeah, I know. I was there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I was going to say, there's the lovely cover, and that, I love that actually both those books are, it's a photo of your mother, Carolyn, and Joan, that's your daughter. So,
yeah.
And Scott is
the same publisher too.
Yes.
Yes.
But we
and-
love Scott, as a sister press poet as well. Julian, you said you were especially struck by the suitcases in the asylum attic. They made you think of Auschwitz. Yeah, that was very haunting.
Mm.
Very haunting. And then Donna asks for you, Carolyn, what got cut out, left out of the book? And she kind of started talking about that, and why and how did you choose? And I think that guideline of what pleases me is it kind of sounds like you really asked, what do I enjoy being in there? What works?
There were that sort of heaviness of writing about that topic got set aside as much as possible. And so there's a poem in the book called Prayer, which is about, after I realized I had these images, these drawings I'd made of, at the age of 2, where I'm saying, Daddy, come home and, and love me, hug on me. And, that the fact that I got that and I saw those pictures and saw that I had said that and I had believed that, led to my writing a piece, a very kind of sparse piece about how I loved before, that kind of thing. So it was taking each little piece and going, okay, what can I do with it? What can I do with this? So there were a lot of pieces, Donna, that I cut out that were really more about the abuse. When I decided that this book was going to be for my mother, then I didn't need so many pieces about my father. Yeah, so that was important. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Donna. And I do think it's key having, Veronica, having your writing group, having people that can see and hear you and you as the poet, and have that vision of what you're creating, or help you articulate and move into that vision.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful. There are 4 people here from my writing group. It's lovely.
That is awesome. Very fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss any questions, guys? Just unmute and ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary, we can.
The timing, the spacing, and the reading of the poem allows the listener to fully envelop the experience, and the visuals. I could see, as she left me time to visualize the horror, and I appreciate that. It's horrible, but it's what it was.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I think that the making of a poem itself is part of the ability, that you're crafting something beautiful out of this experience, is part of the whole healing. Because if you're just writing it, that's the churning of it. But now you're creating something that has rules, that has craft, that has, that you have to sort of edit and look at as a poem. So it's this paradox of this deep feeling and this crafting of the poem. And I think I think that those of us who have had a trauma like that you have to be at a certain distance. And it might be that the poetry puts you at a certain distance of it, or you have to be at a certain distance to write the poem. So I really think that those two things, and that, making beauty out of this. I mean, it's such a rebellion.
I think it's alchemic. I think that's
resistance, right, alchemic, right.
Yeah, that was certainly true for me. And I will say that coming to a place with a poem and then with a manuscript that I felt good about was a big part of the healing too, and then having it published and, having that story, that set of poems out there. It was like people say to me, well, were you excited? You got your book published? And it wasn't excitement. It was a settling. It was like, oh, okay, that's good. That's out there. That's really good.
Yes, I've walked past that.
Say that again, Scott.
Well, I mean, when you think you have concluded, when you've done, sometimes you write as much as you think you have to write on a particular topic, and you put it in print, and you're done with it. You're going on to something else. I think, hopefully, in your heart.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the moving, puzzles or the pieces of the puzzle for people when they're approaching what their healing path is. I mean, if you think about those of us with trauma and particularly complex post-traumatic stress, there's a lot of moving pieces, the somatic, the spiritual, the physical, the emotional. And I think the creative approach is a very important one. Having spent many years as a rape crisis counselor, we did poetry therapy, and we would find poems that resonated. And I can't tell you how invaluable it was to have people writing about the experiences that so many people kept hidden and secret. So, Marge Piercy was one of the first ones that I remember, the rape poem. And it felt like, we have somebody who has spoken the truth, who has said something very important.
And that speaks to us as creative beings, that speaks to us, and it inspires us and moves us to do our work as well. I mean, I remember Sharon Olds, I go back to 1937 or 39, it's just an amazing poem that is about, I'm just going to take those two dolls that were my mother and my father, knock them together because they don't know what awful things they're going to do.
Was that Satan Says from that book?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I saw her read, back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Speaking things that was, yes, Joan just said it's destigmatizing. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Regina did have a question, Carolyn. How long did it take you to put this book together, start to finish? Did you ever feel like stopping?
No, I never felt like stopping. Never felt like stopping. Start to finish, well, I spent about 2 years writing that first version, all those poems about abuse. And then another 2 years sort of kind of setting that aside and starting with the things that I really wanted to be in the book. And so it was a total of about 4 years, and then a year of preparing it for submission. And I'm now writing poems about living in Fiji.
Cannot wait. Joan had a quote from Gregory Orr: the more artful a thing is, the further it is from the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it.
And Scott, once again, thank you for bringing kick-ass poetry into the world.
I'm just a mechanic.
So Malika, you said before we started, you said you had a question for me.
Oh, I
about-
did. I got so off track. I totally forgot. I did want to know more about your memoir and that portion of your life history as an activist. And I know you have some of your fellow activists here, so I did want to celebrate how important it is to people that speak truth to power, which I think is the same topic we're talking about. But a different version in your life. So if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Well, I will just say, yeah, I did write a memoir. It's called Love Changes Things, Even in the World of Politics. And it's about my being moved. I felt like the universe had moved me to Washington, D.C. The Nuclear Weapons Freeze campaign, and then the coalition that was working to end nuclear test explosions in Nevada and in Semipalatinsk in the Soviet Union. And I'll just say one or two things because that's another whole business, right? But one thing is that the work led us to me, and there were millions of people who were working for this. It wasn't just me, but I was sort of the organizer on one end of it. Led us to the Soviet Union to sit across. I sat across the table from the vice chairman of the Soviet Union. And he said, what can we do? Because both countries were still building more and more nuclear weapons. And I said, end nuclear tests. And I said, if you do that, our Congress might pay attention. He came around and he took my hand and he said, oh, thank you for telling me. It's like, I'm sure they'd heard it before, but it's like, and I just want to say that it was the universe led me to the work. I went in kicking and screaming. I didn't want to do it. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about nuclear weapons. I didn't know anything about politics. But I got led to do it. So
I love that. I like being able to witness people that are at the right place at the right time, and they rise to the occasion and surprise themselves. That's good stuff. Thank you for remembering I had that question too. I'd forgotten. Thank you so much for reading. That was fabulous. I look forward to sitting down with your book, Asylum. Just a reminder, if you want a signed copy, please reach out to Carolyn via her email. There's a link in there to go directly to Main Street Rag. You can also buy from her. And I want to read through the list that I have for open mic just to make sure I have, if I've missed you, please say something to me. Christy, Scott, Joan, Doug, and Jennifer. So Christy, I am coming your way.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm going to read this lighter poem today from the book titled Finding Her, that is officially out now through Finishing Line Press. But somebody asked me to read this tonight that had heard me read this earlier this week. So I said I would, and it's one of my favorites to read. This is titled Yoga Pants. Shopping at Target, I see them and smile. Remember wearing a similar pair? Sister yogas. These are heathered gray. A teal roll-down band provides a backdrop for silvered leopard spots. Remembering my legs, strong and shapely, used to plant my feet, raise my bottom, bridge all my strength. My sister yogas assisted that derriere move. Squeezing tight, lifting body parts into perfect poses. My abs, never carved, but always flat, stood at attention, saluting the colored swath that kissed my belly button and nuzzled its bejeweled ring. I have to try these on. Snatching them off the rack, I glide into the fitting room. Just outside my stall door, a full-length mirror waits. My eyes alight with hope as they adjust to the reflection. A fellow shopper smiles behind me. Oh, you precious thing. Those yoga pants hug your love bundle. And just like that, my belly button's unintentional smile opened wide the veil, swaddling my all too unrealistic fantasy lost somewhere between not pregnant and not even almost flat. That's a true
Thank you.
story, y'all.
Thank you, Christy. Awesome. Scott, I'm coming your way. Oh, you need
it's-
to put your
it's-
book, please. Because
I
both
was-
Scott,
I wasn't planning on reading from the book.
oh, but I do want everybody to know that both you and Christy have new books out. So,
Yes, so I'm
I
gonna put all
Yep.
of my information in. If
Yeah,
anybody
and like
wants
a
a
dummy,
copy.
I'm not doing what I was supposed to do, hold up my book and say, it's not here. But living in a red state blues, if you
yes.
go looking for it. I was listening to Christie's poem, and it reminded me of when my wife and I used to take Tai Chi, and there was a girl there who was taking, I forget what it was she was taking. It was 2 different classes. And she always came in these Veronica, what is it? What's that mall store? Veronica's.
Victoria's Secret.
Well, yeah, Veronica, yeah, that's it. And she always wore these same pants, and we used to call her Angel Butt because right across her butt was the word angel. So anyhow, I really dragged that story out, didn't I? I listened to Caroline's work, and it was, it's so serious and dark, and I didn't bring it. I feel like I brought, a plastic saber here, but I brought some stuff that is meant to be a little bit lighter.
Definitely.
This one's coffee shop poem number 256. The girl in the coffee shop looks better than anyone should to an old man at the counter who spent the last 100 miles rolling on hot asphalt with a squadron of gas tank buffing beer bellies, and now feels playful, entitled to some clever banter. The guard at the gate of fantasy land shrugs, says, "Sure, why not?" and waves him through. The old man slips into his best Elvis Presley routine and learns that some things don't bridge the generational divide. Falls back to coffee, black, and shrinks into his seat with all the other character actors on the desolate road to Relic.
Relic. I think I know that road.
Nice.
Thank you, Scott. Joan, I am headed your way.
And here I am.
Thank
I'm going to read from this book that Scott published, Scott at Main Street Rag, the engineer, Karen Clare, and I will read We Dream. Surgery again next week, Claire. In recurring dreams, we rescue you separately, even in our sleep, in the bed where you were conceived. Your father dreams he is the surgeon, the genius who solves your puzzle, excises the trouble, makes you safe as no real doctor has. My dream is both wish and sacrifice. I take on your burden and your pain, offer my flesh to the surgeon's knife. I tell you, I can take it. I'm a grown-up. Dreams seep out our bedroom door into your room down the hall. You ask me over and over what happens when people die. You decide. They go into the forest and lie down.
Mm.
Thank you, Joan.
I didn't say that Claire was 3, maybe 4 at that point. So Scott, thank you for making this such a beautiful book. Look at that girl.
It's a beautiful book, and it was really lovely to hear you read another poem from it. Doug, I am coming to you. Give me just a second. There we go. I see you now.
I'm not going to read from this book.
But, oops, if I can get it on here, I do edit this book. So if you're interested in submitting work to the Heron Clan, we're always taking stuff. This one's called Diner. Ever stopped into the Olympic Cafe on Geary Street, a couple of blocks up from Union Square? For free, you can wallow in the back and forth of a retirement-aged waitress and an octogenarian cook. 10 seats at the counter, one a backless stool, and 20 booths welcome a father scolding his 30-year-old child. Tourist families, those who collect $10 in change on the street, and one fat poet, high off the fumes, still resonating at City Lights Books. What is it, sweetie? Rings from the waitress. Half the duo that mans the entirety of potentially 60 customers as the anguished father laments, rues, is saddened by his son's inability to attain autonomy. These hills, unlike Moab or Reno, are dotted with architecture from all movements. This era's lot is heavily homeless, reflecting the capitalist disconcern for the unproductive. The ones who meander in at 5 a.m., clearly sad, with coffee warm-up money, get the best treatment as a hackneyed Greek-English mix spews forth from the open format kitchen that welcomes all to watch an 80-year-old cook diverse meals rapid fire, 10 hours straight, 6 days a week. 4 Dutch tourists eat.
Awesome, Doug. Thank you very much. And I did put Heron Clan in the chat section, but if you could put a link to maybe the submissions page, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
Will
so
do.
much. That's perfect. And Jennifer, you're our final reader for tonight. And oh, there we go. I see you now. I'm coming your way. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you. It's hard to be last on this night of amazing poetry. This is called How Should We Dress to Spread Ash? 2 days, 3 showers later, grit remains stubborn beneath my fingernails. Beach bound, we agree on shorts and t-shirts, swimsuits and cover-ups, an old backpack and 2 buckets. Should I paint my nails to hide the remnants or bare them? Not business suits and ties, dress shoes. 13 adults struggling through sand would look like moon-marooned missionaries. Or scrub with coarse brush and liquid soap in the laundry sink as after gardening. Still, we attract attention, passing purple pails among kin at dawn, sprinkling fistfuls of ash and bone chip like sown seeds. Will the grocery clerk judge me unkempt when my grime-lined fingers accept a receipt? Hi, Mom. Here you go, we whisper, releasing remains that commingle with sand between toes and cling to drugstore flip-flops. Only my left hand, sinister, I recall from Latin, is tarnished. She was also left-handed, my mother. After, my sister and I rinse buckets at ocean's edge. Our brother, the middle child, dives, stoic, into cold, gray waves, emerges, glistening and whole.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank y'all very much. Regina, I did not have you down. Did you not want to read tonight?
No, I just I thought about it, but it was so, what I've heard is it's just been so poignant. I don't even know how to be. So I'm just
Well, we love you just how you are.
Thank you. I love you.
Thank y'all so much for being here, for creating community. And Carolyn, thank you so much for reading from your book Asylum. And Scott, thank you for publishing it. Yeah, wonderful. Donna just wrote wonderful evening. Thank you all. I Thank you all for being here and hope to see you next Thursday.
Thanks, Malika. Bye.
Thank you.